Hello everybody, my name is Alex Hasapidis, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Political Union Review. This is our first video. So today I'm joined by three of our staffers. We have here to the left Hezril Azmin, who's the president of the Political Union Review. To his left is Julie Corbett, one of the editors of the Political Union Review, and Victor Ma, another editor of the review. And so at the time of this recording, a lot's been going on in Yemen. It's basically launched into basically a civil war over the past couple of days. The president of the country, Mr. Hadi, has fled due to the rebel forces essentially attacking his home, attacking the capital of Sana'a, and driving him out. So, Hezril, do you think that there is going to be more of a robust response to what's going on in Yemen than there has been to what's been happening with ISIS?
You know, it's funny because Saudi Arabia has really just leapt at this opportunity. They just send in, their bombers and essentially bomb the hell out of the Houthis. And, on that part, if Saudi Arabia is going to commit forces to Yemen, then it's certainly long overdue that it should have committed its forces to Iraq, And with Iraq, I say that the Saudis, the Iranians, the Jordanians should put boots on the ground to tackle ISIS, because this is not a terrorist group in the sense that they don't send suicide bombers and then start running away. This is a capable army force, a military force, whom they claim they boast 30,000 fighters apparently. From all corners of the world, and they have a government structure. They have an emirate, So, in that sense, I suggest the Saudis, be a little more consistent in their approach in the region, and it's great, if America is doing too much, which it is, and it has other situations to deal with, then let the Saudis who buy so much American weaponry do the job.
And truthfully, it's all about assets, truthfully. Does the U.S. have assets in Yemen? Do they have money in Yemen? Is it financially absolutely necessary to go and intervene in Yemen? The U.S. is not going to intervene in Yemen unless there is something at stake.
So, Hezril, what do you think has changed Saudi Arabia's calculus when it comes to Yemen? Why respond to Yemen but not ISIS?
It's... I think it's for one, the Houthis are supported by Iran. Big exclamation mark there. That's really it, I think. I mean, at the end of the day, they're Shiites, they're Sunnis. At the end of the day, this is what it is in Iraq, in Syria. It's an imbalance of Sunni and Shiite minorities or majorities, these governments controlling, these minority governments controlling a majority population of the other sect, and this country being Shiite, this country being Sunni, and it's all a mask at the end of the day to advance their quote unquote national interests.
So now, pivoting to ISIS here, do you guys see the fires burning out anytime soon? Do you see an end to this conflict in the near future? Julie,
not at all.
Take it away.
No, not at all. I mean, we see these micro conflicts that are sort of arising, and they're not necessarily ISIS, let's say, based or ISIS rooted, but they are ISIS influenced.
Sure.
Boko Haram, which has been around for many years and way more active than ISIS has been in the present time, has spiked in terms of violence. Definitely probably in response to the ISIS violence and terror that's been happening in Syria, in parts of Eastern Europe. So I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to continue for many years. One, because of the scope, and also because the intellectual minds that are actually at the forefront of ISIS.
Yeah.
So.
No, there's been a lot of talk about how the heads of ISIS have learned a lot of lessons from al-Qaeda, that they made the organization much more decentralized, so there isn't an Osama bin Laden at the top, where if he's killed or taken out of commission, somehow the whole organization falls apart. So they've seems like they've learned a lot of battle tactics.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and a lot of these guys that are part of ISIS were people fighting the United States in Iraq.
I mean, a lot of them were former generals in Saddam Hussein's army. So we're not talking about some, amateurs, picking up guns and going nuts. It's just, I mean, but I think, in regards to, in response to your point, I think that it is possible to, within the next year or two, to actually eliminate ISIS if the region grows some balls, and essentially, I think, and support the Kurds. The Kurds have been doing more than anyone. The Kurdish Peshmerga, they've shown it. Sure, they're a small size, they're a small force, but with proper training, Germany's training them right now as we speak.
The United States, of course.
United States, but I think look, it seems that they've been doing less talking and more of the action. The Iraqi permanent mission to the UN, 2-3 weeks ago said, we're going to take Mosul back. We're going to, the Iraqi army is prepared, and I don't buy that.
So I'm going to have to disagree with you on one point, and that's the fact that within 2 years, ISIS could be completely gone. Here's the thing. So, terrorist organizations have existed for so many years for one fact only, and that's that they're not a nation. They don't wear a uniform. There's no sort of policy or law that they follow, so they blend right in with the culture, with the community, with the people around them. So it's literally impossible to eradicate an entire terrorist organization within the span of just 2 years. The other thing is that ISIS, to just be blunt, is sexy. ISIS is sexy to students of Europe, to young girls who...
To disenfranchise young people.
Yes, and it's a very romantic movement that they're putting on. They have very, very, very intelligent people working for them who know how to hit the right points.
What do you guys think the chances are of there being some kind of an actual ground invasion of ISIS by American troops?
The only reason I could see as the U.S. absolutely getting involved with the ISIS situation is if there was another catastrophic event that is equivalent to 9/11. That was basically the reason as to why the Iraq War happened, although now we can see as there was other reasons as to why that actually happened. But that would be the only reason that the American public would be on board and indirectly pushing the United States to actually going to war on ISIS. But it would have to take something at our own land for us to go to war with ISIS.
Because it's often argued by many people that the drawdown in Iraq essentially created such a power vacuum that allowed people to essentially, like al-Maliki, to take these very harsh sectarian policies and to stir up agitation and create this power vacuum in Iraq that led to the rise of ISIS. So perhaps maybe the United States is trying to stop something similar from that happening in Afghanistan.
And I absolutely believe that as well. And it's going to take many years before we're absolutely completely gone from Afghanistan or even the Middle East. It'll take maybe 20 to 25 years just because the amount of problems that we've caused. I mean, we've essentially run someone over and then stuck a Band-Aid on it. So how exactly are we supposed to leave that country and expect it to still stand?
So negotiations with Iran are very tense for the past couple of weeks, especially given Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to Congress in which he essentially lambasted just the idea, essentially, of a deal. There is no, at least at the time of this recording, there is no actual deal yet that anyone has seen. It's still in negotiations. But there's still a lot of talk about what this deal might include. On principle, this deal is a bad idea. So, Victor, what's your take on this?
I think that just it's a very messy situation. Iran Iran wants to develop this program and it wants to do so, but there's always these sanctions all against it, and so there's always also a shift in power or like a struggle in power between the Khomeini or the Ayatollah and the actual president who wants to go for a different route and wants to, industrialize the country. It does have like the 18th biggest GDP in the world, and so there's this move to sort of secularize the economy so that people have better standards of living. But then there's also the side of it wanting to become like a nuclear power. And so there's this battle within Iran itself.
So Senator Tom Cotton essentially, and 47 other Republican senators essentially sent a letter to the Ayatollah and I believe a number of other Iranian officials, essentially informing them that how the United States system works and how treaties are ratified by the United States Senate, and essentially the subtext essentially saying that a treaty, any treaty the president signs, could be negated by a president or by a future president. And it caused a stir in a lot of circles because it looked like Congress had been overstepping their bounds, or perhaps making a fool of themselves by essentially getting in league with Iranian hardliners who also don't want a deal. So, Hezril, what's your take on this letter? Do you think it was a good idea to send a letter? Do you think it was
it's disastrous because, well, first of all, Congress is made up of senators and House of Representatives. The people elect them, to handle their constituencies. That's first of all. Second, there are diplomats all over the world making diplomatic maneuvers every day. They're going behind closed doors at the United Nations. They're going through, they're calling each other through secure lines and doing this and that we don't know of that changes the course of history in a behind the scenes way that even the president might not be able to achieve himself.
For sure.
And it's foolish, of Congress to disrupt that natural structure.
Why does any nation at this time ever develop a nuclear program, or have a nuclear program, or once had a nuclear program? For the exact same reason that it still exists, and that's to develop nuclear weapons. So, and it might not necessarily be to use them, because that's definitely not going to happen. We know the risks. So it's all about power, and that's truthfully what it is. You have a nuclear weapon. You are now on the same table as the U.S., as Britain,
as Israel.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have a nuclear weapon. It's not to play with it. It's just to show off, your new sneaks. It's just so that they know that you're serious. They can treat you with respect.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's Likud party, which is a sort of center-right party in Israel, claimed the plurality of seats in the Knesset, essentially 30 seats. Looks like he's on his way right now to forming the majority he needs to become and remain prime minister.
Well, first of all, I think as political intellectuals, as political scientists, certainly, we shouldn't ignore the fact that he increased his seats by 6. That's a gain. I think it was. I read an article that described Netanyahu as the magician, the person who pulls through at the very end, the magician. And that's at the end of the day, that's an election. That's what the Israeli people want. But I think a lot of that was predicated on fear of Iran. He seems to have this notion in his head that he is, the Churchill of his time, and that he can stand up to the Iranians and prevent them from gaining this bomb, and that he described Yitzhak Rabin, who I consider to be one of the great statesmen of his time, who was on the brink of achieving a two-state solution with the Palestinians. He described him as very Chamberlain, like making peace with the Nazis.
I think all of this is just him appealing to the right. I feel like it's just part of the elections, part of politics to appeal to more people so that your vote your vote count is larger than your opponent's, right? Because up to the elections are pretty tight until the last couple of hours or something like that. So it was a tight race.
If you're going to say something, you should stick to it. It's called sticking to your word, and So it's not surprising that this happened to me. It's just surprising that it happened so fast. If anything, it's surprising that he was somewhat stupid about it.
seems panicked.
Yeah, and like, what leader do we know that has kept all of their promises that they, proclaimed during elections? It's just strategy. It's over time changing their attitude. The problem is Netanyahu just messed up completely, right at the beginning. So yeah, I agree with you totally. How is this gaffe is really going to reflect the rest of his presidency? I mean, his rule, and so this is somewhat frightening.
I think one positive take on this is that the Arab coalitions, the Arab parties were able to form a coalition under Ayman Odeh, and that they're starting, finally. I mean, it's overdue, but to start going to the polls and start caring about these issues.
That's also a bit ironic because the Knesset, I think they implemented some rule that increased the required representation needed for a party to really have seats.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they raised from like 2% to 3.5, which forced these separate Arab or separate Palestinian parties to align together, to come together to form this joint party, so that they have seats in the Knesset.
Yeah. We've seen the political peace process obviously break down a number of times just in the past 15 years.
Right.
Again, especially given last summer when Hamas was essentially hiding in heavily populated areas, essentially so that Israel would have to destroy hospitals, schools in order to find them. And there's obviously a lot of things going on there. That's a totally different argument, totally different scenario that they were in the middle of. But I mean, it's kind of it's kind of symptomatic of how this is going. All right, so everyone, I hope you've enjoyed our video. We'll probably be posting another one in a few weeks to talk about current events in domestic politics and international affairs. To record that. But I will see you next time.